that is probably some big advice I can give to any younger generation is you don't know what you don't know. I get it, you're scared. I was there, but you got to find people who are going to be in your corner who can just get confidence.
Because it's like initially the knowledge learning curve is super sharp. Looking back now, because of all your experience in property and probably the amount of transactions that you've been a part of, why did it take me 3 months? I can get something done in like 2 hours if I want to.
Literally.
I guess it comes after that knowledge curve and all the experience you have now.
The old saying there, confidence comes from competence. The only way to become competent is either gain the knowledge or do the reps. I think too many people wait to feel confident rather than focus on the ability to be competent. And to be competent, when you're not competent, you actually have to lean into discomfort. There was 3 pivotal moments where I felt like throwing in the towel. Number 1 was
So everyone tells business owners the same thing, pour every dollar straight back into the business. But what if the smartest thing you can do with the next dollar is buy something that pays you while you sleep? My guest today went from professional footy to early retirement at 26, pivoting straight into building a business and quietly becoming one of the top 1% of property investors in the whole entire country. So is this your business goal or is it the engine for something bigger? We're going to dive in and find that out. Matt, thanks for your time.
Timmy, mate, thanks for having me.
Mate, I wanted to kick off with take me back to your playing NRL. You're the hooker for the Titans, great team, and a knee injury ends it at 26. What actually goes through your head while you're processing that change? And when you've built this whole entire career so far around that, how did you pivot your mindset in that? Because it's a pretty big shift at that young age.
Yeah, and that's probably where my mind goes first, is realizing in my 20s, my brain wasn't fully developed. You realize you're still so young. Upon reflection now, I'm sort of in my mid 30s. In your 20s, you're so young. So dealing with big things like that, it rocks you, right? Because you don't really have the life experience yet, I feel. So for example, my whole goal from the age of 6 was to play NRL. And when I finally got there, the end of age 19, coming into age 20, I achieved that dream, and then you're living it out. And then all of a sudden it not continuing forward on your own terms, that was probably the hardest thing, of it not being on my own terms. So how I guess dealt with that was, it was hard. Obviously it was a very tough moment, and it took time. I've spoken to a lot of people who have transitioned from professional sport out of it. I always say it's like a 24-month hiatus of just rediscovering yourself. And for me, that involved obviously taking time away from the sport, but then just trying to think what was next. I jumped around a few different jobs and different things. And it literally took me 24 months to just kind of find myself again.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, how long did you spend in that wilderness phase of one direction to working out? But that 2-year period is quite a bit of time to think it all through. Most guys would have chased another gig maybe in footy or something close to that same similar stream, but you already bought a property at 22 while you were playing footy. What did you see back then that maybe your teammates didn't? Because that's pretty 22, buying a property, and you're a professional footballer. Can you match that up for me? What generated that initial interest in property specifically?
Yeah, blessing in disguise. There was a lot of senior teammates back when I was playing. So I was one of the youngest in the crew, and there was probably 4 or 5 of us that were under the age of 21. And the rest were had families, probably late 20s, early 30s. I remember even playing with some guys, Preston Campbell was my first roommate. He was coming up to probably 36, 37 or something like that. Scott Prince, Luke Bailey, all the OG Titans, and they've been there for a long time. They're a lot older. With wisdom and age, I guess, comes experience on the world too. And they were buying property. They were, had owner occupiers. I had a few investment properties. So if you're surrounded by that in the locker room, just by pure exposure, I think that's what really helped me spark the interest, number one. And then number 2 is there's a lot of free time when you're an athlete. And, you can use it. And don't get me wrong, I used it too. Playing FIFA with your mates, going to a cafe, having a coffee. But I started diving into the whole property thing in some of my days off. And I was just really curious. And I found a bit of a enjoyment for learning about it. So where that initial interest stemmed from, again, upon reflection, it definitely would have been the exposure in the locker room with older guys. And then the second part of that was once you have the exposure, then the interest kicks in and then you just start, I guess, leaning into it.
I love that. So I went from professional football player to discipline and actually taking on the information that was there. Because most people, you can be in the situation, but it's whether you take it on and implement it for yourself or just go, oh, that's fine, they're buying property, and you continue on playing FIFA until 1 a.m. in the morning. It's like, do you think that discipline came from like your family and upbringing and your athletic passion, like your competitiveness in that in that space to actually take that on? That sparked your interest in it? Do you know what I mean?
Yep, for sure. I would say the initial interest came from, again, seeing guys that I look up to in the locker room who have done a lot in the game. And I remember one player in particular, he was a few lockers down and we used to just chew the fat. Big age gap difference, right? And that's the cool thing around being an athlete. You're like 21 and you're sitting next to someone a decade older every day. Like that's your teammate. So it's kind of like that's your workplace, right? You're sitting next to someone a lot older than you.
So true.
And I remember it blew my mind. He had like 4 properties or something. And I was just like, so like bamboozled, like coming from immigrant parents, not from here, just having one property is like the ultimate goal in life. And I couldn't really fathom having more than like one property. So I used to talk to him. I used to talk to another guy who had a bit of broking and financial planning background. And again, just being curious, asking questions, and then that interest sparked the action. So yes, the discipline was a part of it. And I think anyone playing at a high level of sport has discipline in their blood. But if you didn't enjoy it, there wouldn't be that, I guess, feeling of wanting to learn it and lean into it and be curious. So I think being really curious is a big tip I always give to younger generation people. You don't have to know all the answers, but I think just being able to ask questions, be curious, know that you're so young and you don't know everything is a big one. And just ask questions. I'm just still to this day, I think I'm quite curious. I love asking people questions and trying to understand things. So I would say that's a big part of it.
100%. And I would attest to that, knowing you for the past couple of years and our conversations. There's always questions and transfer of knowledge and opinions from each other that I truly value as well. So I can see that quality 100% in you in that. So let's stay with that first property because that's where the whole thing started, right?
Yes.
During footy. Your first investment property at 22 on a footy wage. How scary was it investing in property at that initial time? Like what was going through your head and what would you tell your 20-year-old self now on that going, yes, that's the right start, or you should have probably bought a different type of property? Like,
yeah, I'll give 2 quick stories. Story 1 is the first owner occupier property. The story 2 is the investment property, because now looking back, different emotions for different types. So my first property was actually an owner occupier because I was paying rent and I was like, I want my own home. And the biggest fear I had with property number 1 was that I've worked so hard to build up a cash deposit. And the hardest part around property number 1 is that initial deposit, like literally having the cash to be able to do it, because you don't have anything to really leverage off, right? I know there's guarantor loans, things like my parents, are immigrants, not from here, very hardworking, but they didn't have a big asset base that I could guarantor off. And so for me, it was like, all right, I'm just gonna try and save up as much, can't be really stingent with my spending and kind of do all that. The scariest thing is you build up a cash deposit and you're about to get rid of all of that. So you really question yourself whether that's the right move, because you think of all the years of sacrifice and one wrong move can kind of get rid of all of that
100%.
deposit. So I found that was the scariest thing of like indecision fatigue. It took me months to get that first property from looking to execution.
Yeah, wow.
Because of the fear of not knowing whether I was doing the right or wrong thing. Because honestly, you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And yes, I was leaning on the real estate agents and as I said, my parents helped me to a degree just understand what not to do and things like that. But then, I don't know, there was one broker in particular that really helped me, just the pure basics of like how a loan works, repayments. You know, you're going to need insurance, and lender's mortgage insurance will come in at this level. And if you want to dip more cash, you avoid, you know, just super basic stuff looking back. But at the time, it was just this minefield of just like information. So that took me a few months just to digest all of that. But I would say if you're a first home buyer right now and you've done really well to get that deposit, I think the biggest fear you're going to have is indecision of departing with that money and not making the wrong move. That is the ultimate fear. How you avoid that fear, I think, is having people in your corner, like I did that broker who really helped me. Just having people in your corner that you can, again, lean into, you know, just give you that confidence that you are doing the right thing.
Knowledge is power at the end of the day, right?
Knowledge is power, yeah. And also when the execution time feels right, just do it too. Because
I like that.
There's no real, you could have all the knowledge too. And this is what I see a lot of younger generation buyers do, is they have the knowledge, they have the cash deposit now, but they also don't do anything with it. So you need to really limit the time between your thoughts and your actions and try and condense that down. For me, it was a lot longer than I looking back, I wish, but again, the learning I took in that time was big. So that is probably some big advice I can give to any younger generation, is you don't know what you don't know. I get it. You're scared. I was there, but you got to find people who are going to be in your corner who can just get the confidence. Once you feel confident, feels right, do something.
That's so good. I love that, because it's like initially the knowledge learning curve is like super sharp because you're learning everything from nothing. And it feels like super long, like you said, like looking back now because of all your experience in property and probably the amount of transactions that you've been a part of, you're like, why did it take me 3 months? I can get something done in like 2 hours if I want to.
Literally.
But I guess it comes after that knowledge curve and all the experience you have now.
Yeah. And it's the old saying there, confidence comes from competence, you know? And the only way to become competent is either gain the knowledge or do the reps, I always say. So like anything in life, I think too many people wait to feel confident rather than focus on the ability to be competent. And to be competent, when you're not competent, you actually have to lean into discomfort. So the ability to get uncomfortable is actually the path to getting confidence.
That's actually where the work happens, right? Being uncomfortable.
Exactly. Yeah. And the more competent you get, believe it or not, you become more confident. And then that loop starts to transpire. And I see that in sport, I've seen that in business, and I see that in property. It's the same philosophy.
I love that. So you've got your first property now. You had this moment where you read the Cashflow Quadrant and something just flipped in your head. You said this was the actual idea that changed how you saw money and how it worked. Now that you're in, like, you started to love property and you started to shift your interest after your professional footy career, how did you start to think about, well, I'm going to start to build a business around it? Essentially, you still had to build a business to fund all of it. You still needed income after that professional footy career to then build that engine to fund the wealth. And you saw property as a vehicle that you were passionate and you liked doing. I wanted to talk through about that engine. So that engine being the Srama Group, very well known on the Gold Coast. You built the business to over seven figures in about 5 years, or just under 5 years, which is severely impressive. Like, give me the real version though of what not nearly broke you, but broke during that process as you have built this business. Because as business owners, it's very easy for all of us, myself included, to look at, well, wow, look at what X has created. Like, look at what Matt has created. It seems so effortless, yet the amount of effort and sacrifice that's required to build anything great comes at a toll or a price. What was that for you over the last 5 years? What are some key moments that you think would help others?
I would say the journey of business, as I said, we're still quite new. I'm not here saying I'm a business expert by all means. Like I know I'm very new in business still. Like within we're just coming up to 5 years at the end of this year. You know, as I said, we scaled pretty quickly. we hit 7 figures pretty quick. I think it was in the first 2.5 years. Like it just come pretty quick. But what I always say is there was 3 pivotal moments where I felt like throwing in the towel. Number 1 was the beginning, when it was so scary. Like, cutting income off was the scariest thing I've ever done. The safety net of knowing a salary was coming in each week is so scary, because that's what all you know. I didn't come from a world of business. So to say that you don't know where your income's coming from next week, it bamboozled my parents. They're like, what are you crazy?
Yeah, it's so true.
You know what I mean? So for me, the moment 1 was not even getting to the start line. I was ready to quit because I had so much noise from my family who loved me so much. And this was lesson number 1, was that the people closest to you want the best for you. Doesn't mean it's the right way for you.
Yeah.
Because I seen the other side of listening, and I was, again, being curious and absorbing all of this knowledge with some great founders, and you hear the stories. And I got really inspired by all these stories that had no money and they went for it and they built something. It's just like, wow, that's incredible. So it can be done. So unfortunately, I went against what my parents believed was good for me, and I went against it. And I leaned into starting a business and said, I'm cutting off my current employment. And I walked in the office the next day, and it was a very safe job. Enjoyed it. It was only like 4 days a week, getting paid well. And I literally knocked on the door and said, unfortunately, I'm going to have a crack at my business. And yeah,
that was it. That's
it.
Pretty ballsy.
Yeah,
because,
I had no clients either.
No way.
No clients.
So no, because sometimes people go, oh, I'm going to start building this thing and start trying to do some prep work. You've just gone, despite all the loving advice from family and your network and support of what you've come to now, and that sort of 4 days a week paid well. People be like, what are you doing? And you hear the founder stories and it's doable, but and I've heard them too. And it's like, well, what's all the effort behind the show reel that they might be presenting, but here's where I started and here's the outcome. And there's not enough time to cover every single thing that happened in between.
Yeah.
So that was the first moment you nearly quit, was actually before you actually started.
Before you start,
What was the second thing? You're in the business now, I'm assuming it's starting to ramp up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly right. So going against what parents said, I just went for it. I cut off the income and I really just backed myself. Again, just caveat on that, I wouldn't actually suggest that. I still think, I actually think some people are better off controlling maybe some sort of side hustle or income. Yeah. Because I was lucky I had some properties and things like that. I don't know if just cutting your income is the smartest move. I really don't. Again, for me, that was what I needed. I needed no safety because I knew that's the way I was wired. Not everyone is wired that way. Yeah. So that's probably number 1. Made the start line and then we're on. And then things just progressed. I started finding, product market fit. I had a lot of knowledge from buying property already, and I had a good network and just doing the things. The second point came, I'd say probably year 2.5-ish. We're flying. This is amazing, earning the most income I've ever made. And then there came a point, and I remember I was sitting in a sauna and I was just thinking, I was like, is this worth it? Is this all worth it? Yeah, the money's great. But I was so burnt out that I started dreading going into work on Monday for my own business. So what I realized is I bought myself a job.
Oh, so I can so relate to this.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So I started talking to people around, how do you value your business? Do I have any value in it? Would someone merge with me and take it off my plate? Literally to those points. And I do a lot of self-reflection. And then I sort of started learning more. And then I realized, you know what, when you're burnt out, just take a rest first. I was wearing all of the hats in business.
Yeah. So could you clarify, can you describe the landscape of it was the Srama group at the time? You're in year 2.5. What was the business structure like? Was it still Matt doing 100% of everything and that's why you're like, I can't carry all of it? Or did you have 1 or 2 team members that sort of helped it, but again, new in business, so trying to work that structure out of divvying and delegating that out? So where were you at that 2.5 year point?
Yeah, I'd say it would have been I was doing a lot of all of the lead generation. So kind of all the marketing. I was closing, doing a lot of the sales and doing a lot of the fulfillment. And then I had a lot of support. I had two people at the time, one person helping with fulfillment support, kind of doing the buyer's agents thing together.
Yep.
And then had someone kind of helping with a bit of jack of all trades.
Yeah. And you need that person in your business
Yeah.
like that, right? To be able to fill all the little gaps.
Literally.
Can you do this? Can you do that? Yeah.
Yeah. And still he's in our business today and he's sort of our head of operations now, but he started off booking me in for meetings, answering calls, helping me set up a CRM, like just everything, right?
Yeah.
Just jack of all trades. So that was kind of the dynamic. I was just doing most of it, getting some help. And as I said, product market fit and it was very profitable, obviously, because there was literally no overheads. We were sharing a desk in a share space. All we needed was RP data and my network, and that was really it. And paying these two people, and then as I said, it was just like, surely this can't be. I can't work harder. Like this is tough. So again, that's where I took that pivot. And I was like, you know what? It's either I quit or I learned the art of business. And I remember it was the same thing in my sporting journey where there comes a point, and I remember I would have been about 15, 16, and I was at the West Tiger. I used to be signed with West Tigers. And I remember I was at a camp and I just couldn't rip the ball left to right. It was my weaker passing side. And I remember one of the coaches saying, that's going to limit you playing first grade. Is if you can't get your ball left to right sharper, unfortunately, I know you got the work ethic, but basically your skill set's not at that level.
Right.
And I heard a quote and it was, things will break down to get to break through. So that was a moment in time where, look, this is a bit of a breakdown in my skill. I've got to break down and have a look at my left to right pass. And I worked on it and started doing these little drills every time I was on the couch. Anyways, it started getting better. Long and behold, I was getting better. My work ethic plus my skill set improved. I ended up making first grade at the age of 20. And I remember that scenario delved into my head in the sauna. So when I was in the sauna, I was like, you know what? This is one of those moments. Things are breaking down to get to breakthrough. I've got to break down this business right now, and I've got to upskill my knowledge on how to progress to the next stage.
Where did you reach to first? Like that's an awesome epiphany, like having in the sauna where you have some actually time to yourself.
Yeah.
Because I know, like, as a business owner myself, like you can be running day to day, task to task, meeting to meeting, but unless you create some time and space for yourself to analyze what you're actually doing, going, can I sustain this or not? Or you can't, but you don't know how to solve it. That's pretty cool to lean back on and experience back 15, 16 in a sauna going, I need to take that same approach and apply it to my business. Otherwise, it's not going to happen anymore. That's amazing.
Yeah, exactly right. So I always believe things will break down to get to break through. And that's where I stumbled across more self-development, learning about business. I ended up enrolling myself in something called the Entourage, which was a big investment. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to lean in. At least I know if I do quit, I did everything possible.
Yeah, true. Very true. You put all your inputs in. I reached out. I tackled
Paid
it.
the money. I'm going to learn this thing. If I'm still not enjoying it, then we're done. Started leaning in, learning about business, started doing the things like the Entourage, meeting other business owners. And then it started realizing to me, I was again, wearing a lot of the hats. There's a really good book called The E-Myth Revisited, I think.
Yeah.
It's a classic.
Fantastic book.
Just the classic, the technician versus, So that was just a very simple business book that changed my whole okay, I can actually leverage my time better and now start to take some of these profits that I've been burning myself out for and investing it back into the business through people, systems, processes.
Would you say investing profits from the business into yourself?
Yes.
Building the knowledge base, you're building an asset that never loses value.
100%. And I say this a lot, the best investment you can make in your business is in yourself, number one, because every inflection point during business, I've lent into getting a mentor or doing a course or some sort of workshop that's going to help me solve the next constraint. Now, upon reflection in business, I truly believe it's just a game of like constraint solving. You get to a new constraint and you got to solve it. I always say that new levels, new devils.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter
100%.
what stage of business you're at, there's another constraint you need to solve. So now every time I get a new constraint, my mindset's very different to when I was back in the sauna. It's not as stressful. It's just like, cool, I need to solve this new constraint. That's all I'm going to try and focus on. I'm going to try and reinvest back into myself, mentor, whatever, to help me solve this.
So good.
Yeah.
So that was number 2. Sauna, problem solve, remove constraint.
Yeah.
You said you had 3 moments. When did that third moment come about? And with all that experience you had up to that point, how did you handle that in a different way?
Yeah.
And what was it third?
Yeah. Great question. I would say quite recent. I'd say within the last 12 months, it's not so much wanting to quit, more so like, this is tough. This is tough. Like maybe it is going back to just myself and, getting rid of all the noise. When you're scaling business, you're going to require more people, and people come from different beliefs, different upbringings, different way they do work. Everyone's a different temperament too. So the more the team grows, you realize that's a lot more weight on shoulders. There's a lot more, I guess, people who are relying on this business succeeding for them to have food on the table. And that was the next constraint, and we're going through it now, which I'm loving, is management of people. And we have a team of 16 at the moment. So it's small enough that it can be nimble, but it's large enough where there's people problems, and you got to kind of solve that and have leadership in place. So I've been on a big path of like learning about more leadership, effective delegation. How can I upskill and lead one of my key team to then be able to lead others effectively? So I can lead through someone and they can lead it there. So building like leadership structure.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like different problems, like finding your first income.
Yes.
To breaking down the structure of the business to increase, and you got that whole entire business ramps up. You need more people. Then suddenly it feels like business is just there to pay payroll.
Yeah,
it's like, can I just go back to myself and just pay myself?
It's the same. It's
so many times.
It's the same constraints. I talk to so many founders. They all go through the same thing, and that's what I've been enjoying. Is like, oh, this is normal. This is growth, and this is. You look at your P&L and your profits diminishing compared to what it was, and you're like, what am I doing? And I'm more stressed.
More work and more stress. And it's like, hang on a second, isn't this for everybody, but it's also for me, right?
Exactly.
I love that.
It's really learning that leadership is the ability to get things done effectively through other people. And sometimes someone might be listening to this in a similar phase where, they're moving and they're shaking, but ultimately they're the bottleneck because all shots called are coming on their shoulders.
Yeah.
So the new delegation is being able to delegate outcomes moving forward.
I love that. So that's like a massive journey from start to now. And I thank you for being candid with how you shared that too. Like, how do you think your business and your property side, 2 separate things, does one feed the other? Like is business and property like together, or for the owner pouring over every cent back into the business? We've just talked through that on team or knowledge or impact. When is the right call, and when is it a trap? Like, when is the right call to go, yeah, I'm going to invest in business from your perspective before we dive into your property journey further? And when is it a trap to go, now's the time to actually start pulling some dividends out of the business and start creating that real wealth for myself, which is why I started it back when I was a solo at the start. What's your view on that?
Such a good question. I love talking to business owners, founders about this. To put it simply, I try and run my life in 3 key buckets or 3 pillars. And the pillar is, founders will relate to this, or business owner. You got your business, number 1. I've got my wealth pillar 2. So that can be, for me, I invest a lot in the residential, commercial property. Everyone's got a different, but I think there has to be some sort of wealth pillar. And then the third one's personal pillar, like just life, like fun, health, all the important things, whatever that is for you. Those 3 pillars kind of in unison at any one point in time are all working together. And what I found is some business owners dip too much into just the business, and that is the life, and they've gone all in, and that you have to go all in.
There
But
is that period, right?
there is, yeah.
Like that you have to go all in if you're going to make it something.
Exactly. I just think having awareness that, hey, how are the other two pillars going whilst this? So, for example, during the start, I would say I was nearly all in the business bucket because it's so new, at the expense of my health bucket was probably a little bit less, right? Then there comes a point in time where, hey, I've got profits now. I'm going into the property stuff. But hey, you've lost focus of building the business in the first place, you know? So I just think I always control my pillars all together because I think if you can have them all working as an engine that feed each other, I think that's where it's at. Because ultimately, the business, I feel, should feed the wealth engine, and the wealth engine should feed eating the fruit personally. Because at the end of the day, I also see people building and building and building, but they're also not enjoying the journey and why they started. And the whole reason they started the business was to enjoy and have more freedom, but they have everything but.
Yeah.
You know,
it's so uncanny because the same thing happened to me. It's like I'll start Kai Construct, the first company, and I was starting a family at the same time. It's like, I'm going to start this business so I can have all this time for my project management role. And it was the complete reverse. And the first 3 years is just like you said, just no life bucket. You just got to get it done. So
exactly. So it's just being aware,
of those three, and there's always a pendulum between all three, right?
100%.
It's like it really depends on where
you're at.
Is.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And there's a quick little tip, and this is going a little bit deeper into the property versus business relationship. I remember early on, I was just focused on the business, you know, drive it, profits, all of that. And I remember there was a year I was like, all right, I'm focused on the business. Next year, I'm going to take some dividends out and reinvest it into property and wealth, take some chips off the table.
Yeah.
And upon reflection, this is a thing I always do now. I kind of work in 3 to 5 year kind of buckets, because what I did wrong was I started reinvesting back into the business before like end of financial year and diminished the profits. So the borrowing capacity got affected on the buying side. So realistically, looking back, I should have went hard, retained the profits, waited till end of financial year, get the good borrowing, then we go back into business, and at least we got the borrowing for the property side. So what I mean is, just like a footy game, you have quarters, you have halves, you have full games. It's knowing where on the field you're at. All right, this 6 months, I'm going full for profit gain, going all about profits. Let's lean things up. Can we automate things? Why do we need to hire that person right now? Let's go. Knowing that if you can make the end of financial year P&L look a bit more juicy, awesome. Let's take some chips off the table, look after my other pillar over here, because ultimately that's what we're building business for, is to look after yourself too, right?
Yeah.
But then knowing that, hey, that's sorted. I can borrow against that now. Had the tick. Now it's like, let's invest into people, processes. Let's start remunerating, upgrading some of our key talent, really investing back into the business, and know that that's going to doesn't happen straight away. That could be, you're out of the property game investing for maybe 12, 24 months, but ultimately
what the end goal
you're
is,
playing
right?
two halves each side. So that's something that I wasn't doing back in the day. I'm only just starting to do now.
I think that's super strategic, and that comes from business acumen over time, and looking back and reflecting and going, I can learn from that. I'm going to do that different this year. And a lot of my mentors have also said, like older guys, right? Like older developers, 30, 40 years in the game, they're like, you're never going to have it all dialed.
Yes.
And even they're learning, like, I'm not going to do anything this year. And I love that. It's like being strategic, the quarters, the halves, the full games. That's really powerful. So the business funds it, but I really want to get to what's property actually done for you now. So we've got the 3 pillars you talked about, which I think's, I can relate to that. So like really, really well. But strip out the numbers for the second. So no numbers. But what has building a property portfolio actually given you as a business owner, and like as Matt, as like a person? Because I want to lead on from that is that your business can quietly become your whole identity and your whole like world and your safety net of like, you've got this regular income again that you used to have working for someone, but you're doing it for yourself. So did having assets outside the business change that for you? But coming back to like, how has building a property for portfolio actually given you as a business owner? And we'll dive into what does that mean for you personally now?
Yep. Great question. Really good question. I would say the biggest thing that taking some chips off the table from business and reinvesting it back into a wealth bucket, whether that's residential, commercial property for me, it could be whatever for someone else. What it's done for me is actually given me more freedom and space and a more relaxed approach to now how I approach business. So for example, if you had all your chips tied up in your business, right? And I respect anyone who's all in on just every chip on the table, push all in on business. I fully respect that. For me, I'm a bit more risk averse. I'm taking some off and I'm storing it away to build wealth, and that's capital appreciation. And that's helping me feel more relaxed and work so I can actually take more risks. So number one, it's actually made me more risk taking, to be honest, knowing that I've got this over here. I can take more risks over here with the business now. I can reinvest into a marketing department. I can reinvest in some of my key people and give them the bonuses they deserve. I can go try and find new talent, systems, procedures. So knowing that, hey, you're having a crack, but also if everything goes shit to the wall, you've still got a roof over your head. You've still got some investments, things like that.
I like that.
So that's number one. So it feeds back in the business. Number two, if we talk on the other pillar personally, my dad passed away in 2022. And my mum was coming to a point, she's been his carer for her whole life nearly. And, the youngest of two boys, I'm sort of thinking, I'm like, what's mum going to do now? Like she's not old enough to have the pension. So, and she's from the Philippines, she was a hotel cleaner back in the day. So her, English isn't her first language either. Like, how's she going to, employment's tough as it is. These things start rolling through my head and I'm like, man, I really want to have a conversation with mum. And long story short, I'm now supporting my mum so she can be more present with my nephews, who's helping my brother, who's gone through some hard things himself. And it's just brought the whole family unit together and, being able to fly her to the Philippines, her home country, every year and catch up with her family and keep her connected. Whilst it was a tough period losing dad, I feel as though him looking now, knowing like the business and what I've created is also keeping the unit of family still steady.
That's so cool because it's like you've built the business, you've built the wealth that you have your mental safety net as business owners, like regardless of the bank balance in the business, because sometimes we can peg it to that. It's like, it's fantastic and now it's terrible, especially in building, it's super lumpy, 100%, right?
Yeah.
To then have that wealth of like that safety net for yourself that can also then feed into your life bucket to, help your mom and your family, which is like so cool. It's funny how taking something out of the business to fund your own personal wealth can support the business better and it can support your family better.
I mean, that ultimately, and I think that's why it's important. What do you actually want? Like, and
I agree.
It hit me too because a mentor early on said, well, what do you actually want? You're just building for building's sake.
Yeah.
And you're like, what do you actually want? And like, what are your values? What do you actually enjoy? And, I know you're like me, Tim, like family's one of my biggest things. Like, love my family. So why wouldn't I try and support them and take them on holidays and do things with my nephews that I didn't have when I was their age? Like that's what it's all about, So it's the cool balance now of like more impact equals more income. So I focus more on impact now, and that's completely shifted the direction. And impact is also the people you have in your team, because it's all well and good. Again, you're building a business, taking profits out and things. But if that's at the detriment of just not giving some to the people who have actually helped you get there, that's also something you got to be mindful of. So I've really learned and enjoyed actually seeing some of these people who've been there from the start earning some great money now, but also doing cool things for their own life because of the business.
Their wealth bucket and their life bucket because of the business. And that would almost be you would reinvesting back in the business in team.
The people.
The people.
And that's literally the full circle where I've come now is I only really focus on three key things every single day. The first one and the most important is build the people. because if you build the people will actually build the business. So reinvest time, energy, resources, money back into your people and the key people. There's people who aren't living up to your expectation. It might be a training and development thing, or there might be not a cultural fit. Get rid of them. You know, there's plenty other talent out there like who would enjoy it. Don't feel alone. It is your business at the end of the day. Once you find good people though, keep them, retain them, give them, you know, think of ways you can remunerate outside of just income as well. Like there's plenty of things. Create a good culture for them. I think that's probably been the most fun part the last few years has been the people side and like reinvesting back into them and seeing someone who had no experience as a buyer's agent now thriving as a buyer's agent through the mentorship and stuff like that. So yeah, build the people, build the brand is a big one we're focusing on, obviously just on the brand perspective, and build the business infrastructure, you know, processes, you know, we're doing a bit with AI and things like that. So yeah, ultimately I was chatting to someone the other day, just have some fun. Business is hard enough as it is. Why not have good people in your business and just have some fun? It's not all going to go smooth sailing. So would you rather have the hard times with people you don't like or people you enjoy?
Definitely with people you like.
Yeah.
100%. I was like,
Exactly.
You know what? Let's just go out for a couple of hours and just chill
100%.
because, you know, this is getting too much.
Yeah, it was in my diary this year and it's helped so much is right. You know, we're, as high achievers, you're a high achiever too. And I'd say a lot of people listening to this are high achievers. There's goals, there's aspirations. We're all moving forward. But at the end of the day, let's not lose the fun out of what we're doing too.
What is it? It's not the destination, it's the journey
It's
and
the
the experiences along the way to get to the destination.
It's the journey. It's the people you're meeting along the journey, them coming into your business, seeing them, you know, upskilling through whatever you're creating for them having holidays through the income they're earning. You know, that's the cool part. That is actually the cool part of it. You know, and then if you can take some chips off the table for yourself as a founder, at the end of the day, you deserve it because you're the one who took all the risk. You're the one who takes on all the insurance policies and everything. It all falls on your shoulders, and you're the one who backed yourself when no one else did. So make sure you look after yourself too.
So for people backing themselves in business, I want to bring it to the wealth pillar of like building property because I think you have such a great perspective on it. We're recording in 2026. Rates, affordability, everyone's got a Gold Coast opinion of where it's going. Yours more educated than most, I would say. Is property still the move, honestly? Do you feel Gold Coast?
Yeah, I think property as a just investment strategy as a whole should play some sort of part because I always look at the commodity. The commodity is shelter and roofs over heads. I don't think we'll be going out of fashion anytime soon, you know, fingers crossed, but who knows? But I'm taking a punt that genuine shelter is still a needed commodity. On top of that, knowing that Australia as a whole, we're one of the best real estate markets in the world. And then to go a layer deeper, Southeast Queensland, Gold Coast, I always like areas where it's very landlocked. So lots of demand, low supply. I mean, you're in the build, you realize how undersupplied we are as a city.
Dramatically. And we got the hinterland just cutting everything off.
And we can't build out to the ocean. So in its easiest, simplest form, sentiment changes all the time. So emotions is very normal in any investing landscape. What drives sentiment is what we read, see, and hear. And as we know as humans, wherever we collect our knowledge that feeds our mind is going to make us feel a certain way. So sentiment is normal for it to go up and down, left, right, everywhere. But the fundamentals of just supply and demand in any investment strategy, I think is always going to hold strong. And while I look at that with the Gold Coast and Southeast Queensland and the commodity of shelter, I can't see it going backwards. If anything, I can see it going forward. Yes, there's going to be stagnation, but ultimately at the end of the day, property itself is not a get rich quick vehicle.
I don't think any investment strategy is like everyone's latching on to, I want it done now sort of thing because we've become really impatient people in general. Like a culture, like we want it now. Uber Eats, Instagram, socials, like we just want the time to receive something or the level of effort of work back farming where you had to grow your own food to not leave your couch, push a button, it's there in 15 minutes. or shorter if you pay for priority. Like this whole entire feedback loop is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, but investing needs to be really pulled out to what you're saying. It's a long-term investment. And if that's the case, what do you think most people get wrong about building wealth through property? Is it that mindset that it should be faster, or is it that they don't understand the selection that suits them and their situation?
Yeah. I would say what people get wrong the most with property, two things stick out for me. Number one is right location, wrong dwelling type. So people can be educated, learn about property, podcasts, YouTube. There's information overload. Like you can learn anything you want anywhere. So you could nail the location. You've heard all this correct data around a location. Just because you nail the location doesn't mean you nail the result. You still need the right dwelling type for that location. I think that's number one. Quick example. Obviously, we do a lot on the Gold Coast. It's one of Australia's strongest markets. Quick example of a beachside suburb, somewhere like Mermaid Beach, for example. It's one of the highest capital growth pockets on the Gold Coast. You could nail knowing that, hey, I want to buy a Mermaid Beach, but I'm buying a 1-bedroom high rise in that suburb. Does not mean you're going to make the same capital growth that Mermaid Beach as a whole makes. You've got the right
within segments, right?
Exactly. You've got the right location, but the wrong dwelling type for your goal. That's number one. And then number two would be just overall mindset between thoughts and action. And as I said, it's being able to condense that time in between. So, for example, the most expensive thing a buyer is doing right now in a moving market is staying out of the market. So if you look at the Gold Coast the last 12 months, again, let's use some of these beachside suburbs, anywhere from 12 to 18% month-on-month growth on average. And all the info is on realestate.com. On $1 million, that's 12 to 18 grand roughly, like per month. So every month you procrastinate and wait and thinking what if and things like that. It's basically adding more to your potential borrowing power, and you're seeing the prices slowly climb up. So as I said, generally the best time to buy is when you're comfortable, number one, and you got the finance, don't rush it. But then number two is once you know what you want to buy and you feel confident, like, again, sometimes you just got to back yourself and think, just make the move. Because again, if I look back to that very first property myself, there was probably 3 months I lost a lot of money by being out of the market and just
opportunity cost, right?
Opportunity cost.
Yeah, just because the knowledge wasn't there at that point.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you can speed things up, whether it's getting help, buyers agents, engaging people and broker, whatever. That's just speeds up the curve.
So back to where we started as we wrap it up, is your business the goal or the engine for something bigger? Like, give it to me straight. Is it like, all right, you're defining yourself as a business, or is it just now it's the engine that creates and builds everything else?
Mm-hmm. I'd say in the last, again, probably 2 years, really matured. And I say probably in the next 5 years, I'll mature again, as I get closer to the mid-30s and 40. And I'm sure every time I look back, I'm like, man, I was so young when I said that.
Hindsight, right? It's such a brutal mirror.
Literally, yeah. And then you can only focus, you can only always connect the dots backwards, right? So I would say what I'm really focusing on now and enjoying is the leadership aspect, because I do believe there is potential to scale certain things about our business beyond potentially just the Gold Coast and different things like that. And I'm definitely going to explore that because that excites me. So definitely building the business, finding the right people and investing back in them. Yeah, as I said, my main priority is building the people. I've really enjoyed that because, again, I've realized build the people will build the business. So becoming a better leader, operational excellence, like trying to find systems and incentive programs that are going to retain great talent and create a brand that people want to come to us and we can attract. So that will help, I guess, guide where we're going to go from a business perspective. And then on the property front, as I said, I'm playing those two halves. At the moment, I did a big buying journey the last 12 months, bought a few properties, a commercial, bang, that I've nearly gone to the cap limit on what borrowing capacity is. Boom. Let's go back to this next FY 26, 27, we're reinvesting big into the business and systems, everything like that. So I'm okay being out of the property market now. I did my buying. Now I'm back on this side. There will come a point in time, if you ask me what the next goal is with property, I think there's also the same thing. You can fall in the trap of just buying for the sake of buying.
I'm just buying, right? Yeah. Because
Yeah.
like, oh, I've got 10 properties, but they're all underperforming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, I want 15 or 20, whatever it may be. So identifying what the life I want to create costs is kind of the next journey I'm on.
I like that.
And genuinely, like, if there's enough there already, well, enough's enough. Like, and I think the true version of success is truly knowing when you wake up, like, enough's enough, and you're really just playing the game of impact over income.
I
And
love that.
you're looking at ways you can add value into the world, and put your gifts out, because I truly believe they call it a gift because gifts are meant to be shared. If you kept all your gifts to yourself, it's really, like, that's not what life's meant to be. If you've got a gift and you're doing some amazing things, I think the true version of success is being able to spread those gifts beyond yourself, let it leave your hands, and then focus on the impact you can create. And then the income will be a byproduct of the impact.
So good. So it's like the business engine, so to speak, start off as like a go-kart that you try to build yourself. Now
Yes.
It's come to a point where it's an F1 team and you've got all your management, your pit crew, your driver, and it's like a completely different paradox of like a really high-performing team now that can go to the moon pretty much if you wanted to, as opposed to pushing your go-kart down the hill. And that's a good way of looking at it.
Well, it's funny. Everyone self-reflects on their own business, and but I'd say it'd be in between a billy cart and I wouldn't say F1, but it's somewhere in between at the moment.
But the goal is the F1 team.
Yeah, well, the way they use F1s, everyone. It's a really good analogy. Say, Tim, like F1, you look at that. If the driver was changing his wheels and putting the fuel in and doing all the things, how long would that take him, right?
So true.
It's finding, again, great people, putting them in the right seat, the right time, and making sure you're looking after them on the journey.
Last question. For the Gold Coast owner out there that is like business owner that's running a good business, right? And has zero assets outside of it. Like they've just been focusing on the business bucket. What's the one move that they should start thinking about to make this month from your perspective to end it out?
I would say if there was a business owner listening to this right now and they're going through that scale journey and thinking of, I want to build something outside my business, the biggest actionable task they could do tomorrow would be asking themselves, what do I want? What do I want? And that may be a day thing, that might be a week thing, that might be a month thing of just understanding what do you want. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that is going to dictate what chessboard you're going to start strategically mapping out. Because if you want to run a business and it does X amount of profit and that's you genuinely just love doing that, well then why they may not want to do anything with assets and take chips off that. That's totally cool. On the other front, someone may want to build a portfolio, things like that, and they're afraid to keep building the business, and doing things like that. So at the end of the day, it's what do you want?
Love that.
What do you want? Yeah.
Such a powerful question, yet a very hard one to answer.
Well, once you find out what you want, then maybe you can work backwards from that.
Yeah.
So, and you'd be surprised. I was one of them. It took me years to understand what do I actually want.
Matty.
So, yeah.
Mate, I've loved this conversation. Thank you so much for coming in. So much value. Appreciate your time.
Legend. Thanks, Timmy.